And we're on, Zach Throne.
We're on.
He's Zach Throne calling from the foggy Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco.
That's right, kids.
It actually looks like you're somewhere between San Francisco and like heaven or something. It's so ethereal looking.
San Francisco and a green screen somewhere.
Yeah. A green screen from like 1972.
Totally right.
On the set of like, I don't know.
Superman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, no, I want to start with how we met, which was, I was just thinking about this today because 1992, which I think is 92. I've been trying to.
Yeah, it was 92. Yeah.
That's messed up. So that's 28 years ago. That's almost 30. The weirdest thing to me about that is that somebody who was born in 1992 is like pushing 30.
Yeah.
That's a trip. That's a trip.
Yeah,
to me.
Completely.
So we crossed paths very briefly, or well, probably a couple times actually. I'm not really sure, but I definitely remember 1 or 2 times in the main lobby area of a studio called Little Mountain Sound, which is a legendary spot, and that's like
it was.
Bruce Fairbairn did all the Aerosmith records there.
Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet.
Yeah, exactly. So like major, and Aerosmith, all those Aerosmith records. Yeah,
the Aerosmith were in the studio when you and I met. They were there. Right.
I was with Age of Electric in a little closet in the corner, and you were with the Heights, the television show. Recording. Were you in B, Studio B? We
were in B.
Yeah, so Aerosmith was doing Get a Grip in Studio 1.
In Studio 1, and we were in B, and you were in C.
And you were as freaked out as I was, like, what?
Oh, yeah, because like, remember we would roll in, and there's, like, Aerosmith hanging on the lounge. You're like, just like Aerosmith. They exist.
Just there, yeah. And Steven Tyler never shows up in sweats and a ponytail. He's Steven Tyler all day
Steven Tyler all around the clock.
And you're like, whoa. We'd be sitting in our studio, like, just working on stuff, and the door would just burst open, and it'd be like, "Hey, man, you guys got any tambourines?" And you'd be like, like Steven Tyler in full Steven Tyler mode. You're like, "Holy yeah!" But yeah, no, that was so that was 92. So that's crazy.
It sure was.
So let's get into that later because I'm actually kind of want to start kind of in the beginning for you because I've always been fascinated by the fact that, and we talk about this a lot, that you have. As a guy who grew up in a freezing cold part of Canada for half my childhood, and then I moved for the other part of my childhood to a freezing cold other place. You grew up in Los Angeles, California, and Manhattan, New York City. So the thing to me is always like, what? Like either of those, I talk to Slash about that all the time too. It's sort of like, we're sitting at the studio in LA and I'll be going, so how far away are we from like where you grew up? And he's like, 20 minutes. Because the fact that Los Angeles is the destination for everybody.
It's 20 minutes from anything.
Yeah, well, that's true, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, the fact that, everybody's trying to get to LA, to be an actor, to be a musician, to be, and New York has a similar, totally different vibe, but a similar destination thing. But you were actually born in, Silver City? Or where were you born?
I was born in Hollywood. When I was born in Hollywood.
Really? Wow.
I was born at a hospital called Cedars of Lebanon, which is not there anymore. It was on Fountain and God, what was it? Well, I'll tell you what it is now. It's the Blue Scientology building on Hollywood Boulevard.
No way. We all know that place.
I was born in that building.
So when did it turn over to the Scientology building? Because it's been there as long as I can remember.
I thought for years, I thought I was born at Cedar Sinai. And then my mom said, no, you're born at Cedars of Lebanon. And I go, where the hell's that? And she goes, she gave me the address. And I looked it up, and this Blue Scientology building came out. You were born into Scientology.
That's a different show.
Yeah, that's another different show.
So were they living in Hollywood at the time?
They were living on Kings Road, off of Santa Monica. You know where Hugo's is on Kings Road? They were living right up the street.
No way. Okay, because your dad was, of course, an actor, which we should get into that and all that too. So,
yeah, it's funny. Go ahead. Sorry.
Were they both from New York? Your parents?
They're both from New York. Yeah, my father was born and raised in the Bronx, and my mom was born and raised in Brooklyn.
Interesting.
So that my roots are all New York. I mean, my cousins and my aunts and my uncles and my grandparents. My brother and I were the only two in both sides of our families that were born in outside of New York City.
Yeah, that makes sense because then it was the TV thing and the film thing that brought your family west.
Yeah, I brought my dad west. I mean, he was living in the Village, I think, at the time, and he was just doing theater. And obviously television was on the West Coast, and that's where you needed to be if you wanted to be something. So
Well, let's get into that
west,
because I think that's really interesting. Because your father, I mean, I mean, I wish I would have met the man because for the
yeah,
longest
he was a
time I knew
blast.
you, and it wasn't until like somewhere in the 11th hour of our friendship that it's sort of like your father was on Star Trek, you know, in the
Yeah,
Menagerie, the original, like it's like the 11th or 12th episode of the first season. Your father is Commodore Mendez,
yeah.
Malachi Throne. So it's one of those crazy things where not only was he an actor, he's a serious note. He did the voiceover for the first Star Wars trailers and stuff like that. That
He
to
did
me is
all three Star Wars trailers.
that's bananas, man. That's
It's
totally
pretty
crazy.
nuts.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome. But the so when he came out to Los Angeles, was there did you know, was there a gig in mind, or was it more a case of like he just came out for like
I,
just to do it kind of thing?
I think back then, if wherever you were living, even if it was Saskatchewan or New York or wherever, at the time, the television industry was all situated out west. Well, so was like there was more opportunities out west to see what you're made of,
Right.
to find out your full capabilities. And
Sure.
in New York, there was Broadway and off Broadway, but I mean, I think back then and even now to get on Broadway, it was really tricky. I mean,
Really?
not everybody just shows for an audition for a Broadway play. There
Of
certainly
course,
wasn't
yeah.
any television, and also it's a that level, that echelon of is like being a rock star. It's
Yeah.
like you can work as a musician all the time and play with this person and be in the studio and whatnot, or you're a rock star.
Right.
And either one is fine, but they're completely different worlds. So I
Of
think
course,
getting on
yeah.
Broadway back then was very difficult. And my dad, I think, had some ins, but he wanted to make a living and he wanted to see
Yeah.
what he was made of.
Yeah.
So back then, what you did was you moved out west.
Yeah.
And he told me that he went to San Francisco originally, and he did a lot of theater up there, and he worked more because it was easier to work there as opposed to in New York, where if you did off Broadway, you made
Yeah.
shillings.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you
Or it's
did
like
Broadway,
a favor. Yeah.
yeah, it's total feast or famine,
Yeah.
And so he was tired of famining, I guess, and he went out to San Francisco, and he started working more and making steadier money. And then I guess somebody in Los Angeles said, "Why don't you come down here and you'll get on television and you'll work all the time?" And he went, "That sounds great." So he did that, and then he was still dating my mom in New York.
Huh.
And she told me that he just said, well, if we're going to do this, you should come out west. And she went, all right. And that's what happened.
That's amazing. Yeah. So,
but for a while they were, doing the whole
bi-coastal thing.
the whole bi-coastal long distance thing.
Yeah, of course.
So,
but she's been in LA ever since.
She's never left LA. They started in Kings Road in a little bungalow in West Hollywood, and then they moved to Studio City to a smaller house up Laurel Canyon on the valley side.
Right.
And then I was born, and then they moved, and then my brother was born, and then we moved to another house up Fryman Canyon.
Right.
When my dad was working a lot, and then we moved to this house near Coldwater and Ventura, and in '72, and my mom's been there ever since.
That's so crazy, dude.
Yeah, she's been in the same house in '72.
That's so crazy. And that house was probably like $20,000 at the time.
it was $50,000. It's worth like $1.5 million south of Ventura Boulevard. It's
insane.
Yeah, it's pretty.
But
nice.
that's so interesting to see because, and that was it basically like his return to theater that brought him back to New York, or was he just kind of done with LA, or what?
I think he was done with my mom. I think he was.
How far away can I get? 3,000 miles.
Much that.
Yeah.
No, I think that, well, he didn't really do a lot of theater in New York. I don't think he did any theater in New York. I think when he moved back to New York, when my parents split, it was like 78 or something, 78, 79. He moved to New York because at that time he was starting to get more into voiceover.
Oh, right. He had a hell of a voice. Yeah.
Yeah, he had a great voice, a real deep voice, and people were hiring him to do it. And he did the Star Wars trailer, and then he did the next two Star Wars trailers, and then he was doing like the action like George Lucas, I guess, loved his voice and hired him to do the action figure commercials. And I was like, "You're doing the action figure?" Yeah, he did.
I didn't know that.
Like from Kenner and shit like that.
That's insane.
And I guess somebody said that back then the voiceover industry was for some reason situated in New York City.
Sure.
I don't know why, and they didn't do voiceovers in LA at the time, so. when they split and he didn't have to live in LA, he just went, well, voiceover is going to be my ticket.
Yeah.
So he relocated and moved to Gramercy Park and
now
the city.
Back then, voiceover work, because I know like a lot of voiceover work can be done at home now. People are doing
Right.
stuff. But back then it was like literally you went down to the studio, put some headphones on, and somebody probably directed the commercial or whatever you're supposed to be saying. Yeah. So
yeah, he would go. I went with him a couple of times. He would go. It was very like kind of like what we do if we were playing on record.
Right.
You know, we would show up with our gear and our guitar and our pedal board, and then they would say, all right, I want you to play this and do that and little honky tonk. And you're like, cool, how's this? And they go, great. See you, Todd. Thanks.
Here's your check. Bye.
Here's your check. Bye. And he would just go, that's how he made his dough. And he would go down to these studios all over Manhattan and take the bus. You know, he didn't have a car.
Yeah. Well, I guess if it's all in Manhattan, then where was he living in Manhattan? Was he always in the same place, or did he move?
No,
around?
he was on a place on 19th between 3rd and Irving and Gramercy Park. Great apartment, and my brother and I would visit him there. And then when we moved to New York later, we lived in that apartment, but it was literally the size of like your bedroom. So tiny.
Okay, right.
And I was like a teenage boy, you know, like looking at naked girls, and I was like, I need my own room.
So let's get into that. So how old were you when you? And what was the impetus? Like, what made you go, I'm going to New York? Was that teenage angst of some sort? Or
yeah, I think that was the fire that made me go. But I really think that, well, first off, when I was a little child, we used to, you know, for me, like New York was always the motherland because that's where every member of my family lived.
Of course.
So we would go there. It was basically Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Long Island, and Woodstock, upstate. Right. My uncle and my 3 cousins lived up there. So we spent any holidays or vacations and stuff like that, if we had time, back east, because my mom's parents were there, and my mom's sister, and my mom's brother, and my dad's sister, and their kids. And so we were always there. So all my family pictures from childhood, most of them are taken in New York.
That's so funny,
you know, like if I'm with a bunch of family. So we were always there as little kids, and I just liked it better than California. I love the weather in California, but I didn't, you know, I wasn't like a typical Southern California kid. I didn't skateboard. I didn't surf. I was from the Valley. I mean, if you ask Slash, he'll tell you the whole thing. In the 70s in LA, if you were like a long-haired kid that you know, smoked pot and listened to music and played guitar, if you lived in the Valley, you were just a hick.
That's so funny.
I mean, he'll tell you got ridiculed if you said, yeah, I'm from Studio City. It's like, so there was no beach near us, so I didn't go to Santa Monica and surf. So I just was I stayed and I played guitar. I just wanted to be a musician. That was it. I would lock myself in my room. So other than the weather, I didn't, you know.
So what exactly, but being in California. I always preferred
New York, I guess.
Well, yeah. So now how old were you when you started playing guitar and all that? Like when music kind of came along?
I started on drums. I was like about.
Oh, really?
I was about 12
I think
or 13.
I knew that.
Yeah. I just wanted to play drums. I just thought drums were cool, and I got a drum. They're pretty cool. I mean, if you're good at it, they're cooler.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
They're cooler if you're like talented at it. And I got a drum kit, and I realized I'm not all that great on drums, but my friend would my friend would come over and we would jam like Zeppelin and Aerosmith songs for 9 hours. And then he would leave his guitar because he didn't want to take it home, and I'd start playing with it. And I go, I think I like this better. So I got a $60 guitar and a little raw.
How old are you at this point?
I was probably 14 when I got a guitar.
Okay.
And I just started, and then I moved to New York that year.
Oh,
so
okay.
I brought this guitar, and I knew 2 chords, and I had a shitty amp.
As
you do. And I was in this little apartment in Manhattan, annoying the neighbors because I would just turn on like Diver Down and Blizzard of Oz and play along to it badly, you know. And but yeah, I was about 14 or 15 when I started playing guitar, and I was obsessed. I would sit in my apartment with headphones. It was fun.
That's so funny. So now, like, when you get there, you're living in Manhattan, right?
Yeah. Well, before I left, I was jamming with one of the kids that I used to. The reason why I actually quit drums is there was a kid that lived in Encino. He lived in the rich side of the Valley, and he had this drum kit. He was our age, and he had a drum kit with like rototoms. I had this little like Ramones kit because that was all I could afford. Yeah. And he had this like rototoms, and and he smoked me. It was a party up in Encino, and some kids party, and my little band came, and we sucked, but we played loud. And then
That's
they
all that
played,
matters.
and they did like Zeppelin. They were amazing. They did
Wow.
Rush and all this shit. And he just smoked me. And later on, I found out that kid who I used to like really admire, his name was Steve Perkins.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he I just knew him as Steve. I didn't
And
know
he went
until
on
years.
to be in Jane's Addiction, of course.
Yeah. And we ran into each other like on the road in the 90s. And he remembered me and I didn't remember him. And then he went,
That's
"I'm
hilarious.
Steve." And I went, "Oh, that was you?" And he goes, "Yeah, it was me." And I go, "You're the reason why I quit drums." I quit drums because of Steve. Steve was like,
Well,
I was like, "What am I doing this for?"
That's a pretty good reason to quit drums.
Yeah.
Like, he must have been a monster back then.
He was
yeah,
a
I'm
monster
sure.
at 13, man. He
I
could,
bet.
I mean, he was so good, and I was not. So I just was like, "All right, you do that thing. I'll pick something else up."
That's hilarious. So, but New York's a whole other animal. That's what's the interesting thing is you left the land of plenty as far as like music and
Yeah.
no one could have foreseen the Sunset Strip kind of becoming what I mean, it was already something, but I mean, the fact that the 80s really kind of blew that door wide open to a whole other animal. But you, of course, returned for that point to a certain
Kinda. I
degree.
mean, I miss the Sunset Strip era, and I wish if I mean, obviously no regrets because New York in the 80s was incredible, but I didn't get a chance to do that whole Sunset Strip kind of, and all the kids either on the Hollywood side or in the Valley side, there's this like ritual that when you're old enough to get a driver's license, you drive over to Sunset and you find a band and you start. I didn't get a chance to do that.
Right. No,
but I would read about it. I'd be in New York.
Because you were a Val dude. Yeah.
Well, I was a full-on Val.
But then you were a New York dude. So you were like 3,000 miles away from the hot spot. And then so then when you get out there, how long does it take for you to connect with Frank Bello and Charlie Benante and all the Anthrax type guys? Is that like a high school thing or how did that all come about?
No, I went to high school in the city. I went to 2 different high schools. And one of the guys at the high school I went to for 11th and 12th grade in the Village, he lived in the Bronx. He was from this area. He was from this living development up in the Bronx called Co-op City. Okay. And it's basically this giant universe. It's a city and there's different sections, section 1, section 2, section 3. And each section has its own supermarket, laundromat, pizzeria. They're like self-contained universes. Okay. And he lived in section 4, I believe, in Co-op. And so we were best buds and he played drums. I played guitar. So I would go to his house it was an hour train ride from my house. And I would go to his house, and then from him, I met everybody. All of my closest friends were in the Bronx.
They're all Bronx guys.
All Bronx guys. So it was like my dad joined was a band called Smokescreen. It was a kind of a power metal thrash band out of the Bronx. They already existed, and I played with them on a gig with another band, and they saw me. They go, "Hey, we want to add a guitar player. How about you?" And I was like, "I'm in," because they were really good.
Right.
And there was a club up in Yonkers called the Rising Sun, and there was a club in the Bronx called the Red Eagle, and they're just basically these 2 awesome dives that all the bands in that region played in.
Sure, yeah.
And it was sort of like FM station in the Valley. It was like kind of dumpy, but you would just hang out there because it was in your neighborhood.
Well, yeah.
You knew all the guys because they were all friends of yours.
And it was all your music too, yeah.
All our music. So it was like watering holes. So from that point forward, Frankie and Charlie grew up in the Bronx, and they lived 3 or 4 blocks away from the Red Eagle Saloon, which was on Tremont Avenue, which is a main boulevard in this area of the Bronx. And we would hang out there, and they would show up at this little tiny dive bar.
That's so crazy.
And they were rock stars, and they came in with their Def Jam jackets, and they were all just like cool. And you're just up there playing like Run to the Hills, and you're like, wow, there's guys in Anthrax. And then
because they were quite young, right? They were quite young when they started to kind of
Frankie
take off.
actually, Frankie left high school, went right from high school to Anthrax.
Crazy. There you go. There you go. Yeah.
So he was, he's his feet never hit the ground, and we just became friends. We just hung, and the next thing you know was, they're on Electric Lady, and you'd go down to Electric Lady Studios on 8th Street, and they were like, "Yeah, come on in." And
that's so crazy. What a small world.
But so all my friends in the Bronx went to school with them. They were like, remember Charlie and like John Tempesta, and like, Jimmy Hilario, all these dudes. They all went to the Lehman High School up in the Bronx. And people think to this day I went to Lehman High School. Because they're foggy. They remember me around. They're like, "Remember when you were in Lehman High?" I was like, "I never went to Lehman High School." They've
assumed you were a Bronx guy just because you were around. Yeah.
They still do.
So is that so basically you got into playing your first shows and all that were all in the New York area?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So how long were you in New York then? Like from the time you were 14 till
I was there till probably 21, I think, because
Now,
I it's
oh,
not
okay,
really,
that long.
it was pretty formative years. I mean, I moved there. I didn't have a driver's license. I never had a girlfriend. I
Right.
was just this kind of kid. And then I dropped out of Queens College at 21. I figured I was going to live in New York for the rest of my life. I didn't really see going back to California to live, just because why? When you're situated somewhere, you just don't think that far ahead.
No, of course not. I mean, and we've had this conversation too, because a lot of your friends out there who are talented musicians and stuff like that just never even saw why would we go to California? Like, why would we try and go? And, and there's a whole scene going on by that point in the 80s. Bands are getting signed left and right. And you're thinking, if I was there, you probably would have been part of that thing that's happening,
Yeah. Oh, and even then it was like, if we're there, because I was in this really good metal band. Smokescreen was a great band in the Bronx, and they had a nice following, and we could have. I thought that band could have. And
now you were the guitar player in that band.
There was 2 guitar players. There was an original guitar player, and it was Eddie Evelyn, and then there was and then they didn't have a second guitar player, and they were trying to incorporate a second guitar. Right. And they asked me, and I said,
because at the time, metal was all about having 2 guys playing guitar.
It was all about having 2. It was like Judas Priest and Rad and all these bands. Iron Maiden, Iron Maiden, and then 2 guitar players. So they asked me, and I said, of course. And then we were really kind of, as your bands do, you're on the precipice of going, all right, let's move to where the action is. Start writing our own tunes,
and they're like, hell no.
And they're like, I'm not leaving my block, dude. Everyone's here, and I'm not. Like, come on, we could do it. I know we're good. And they were like, not for me. And I understand, because I had lived in California before, and it wasn't so scary to me. I was like, look, dude, we'll be fine. We'll all get an apartment, or we'll get 2 apartments, and we'll work shitty jobs, and we'll just be, but I think we got what it takes. And it's scary if you've never been across the country.
But it wasn't like bands from New York weren't getting signed. There were bands getting signed. It's just a different thing altogether, I suppose.
It was weird, because bands from New York were getting signed, and there were a lot of great bands. There was bands like TT Quick and all these bands that we used to go see religiously. And they would get signed, but it was tough to get signed. And White Lion was a band we used to play with at the Rising Sun. And they did get signed. But in LA, there was that sort of feeding frenzy, just one giant pool where you would just go in and go, I want, every band was swimming in the same pools. It was easy.
Every gig you played was in LA was basically a showcase for labels. They were just sharks swimming around, like signing bands.
And it was in a 1 mile radius.
Totally.
Whereas in New York, there's a club here in Long Island, there's a club over here in Jersey, there's a club over here, blah, 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 blah. So it was tough to sort of go, well, where are we going to go to find a band? We can go anywhere. We have to have someone recommend this band, and then we'll go see, as opposed to like, let's just go on the Sunset Strip, see what we find. Yeah. I mean, that didn't exist in New York.
Now, but before we go into that, were you like already into acting when you were still in New York? Because I don't even know if people realize how, because it kind of gets lost in the mix, the whole thing about your whole acting side of things. Was that also happening in New York, or was that more something that came to you when you went to Los Angeles?
It totally came to me when I went to LA. I had no intention of being an actor. My father hated the business, although he liked working, and he was thankful to be working and grateful, but he never had nice stories about that business.
Sure.
So I grew up just going, well, I'm not getting in that business. It was ugly. And I was like, nope, not for me. And I didn't, other than being on stage and cause I really wasn't that comfortable on stage back then. I was like, well, other than that, I don't have any interest to act at all.
Well, acting's a whole other animal. Yeah.
It's a whole other animal, and it's a whole other part of your, so it's like, I didn't, and I just, horror stories about how bad the business is. So I was like, well, why would I want to get into that? But our business is shitty enough.
Lots of horror stories there too.
It's like, why do I want 2 horror stories?
I'll fall back on acting. That's always got maybe an education. No acting.
No acting. That's refreshing. I'll be treated well there.
Yeah, exactly.
I moved to California when I moved back to California is when I found.
Now, was that an intentional move, or was it like one of those things, I'm going to go see my mom, and then you just ended up staying, or were you actually like, I'm out of here?
My mom called me. I got accepted. I graduated high school. I was playing in a bunch of bands in Manhattan, in the Bronx. I was just wanted to play. I was in a ska band.
Really?
In Manhattan. Yeah, with my next door neighbors in my building I lived in. I lived in a building on 23rd and East River Drive called Waterside. And on the 23rd floor, down the hall from me were these two brothers, Johnny and Pablo, and they were really into the Ramones and ska and reggae, and they turned me on to all that shit. And we had a ska band called Ghosts of Men. I think we only played like 3 gigs, but I was doing ska, and then I was doing metal, and I was doing punk, and I just wanted to play. And my father was like, well, if you want to be a musician, you should probably go study, which made sense. So I got into Queens College, and they at the time had a really, really reputable music program within Queens College. That's the only reason I went to Queens College.
Okay.
And I would go.
And that's in Queens, I'm assuming?
But it's so far in Queens. You have to take, it seemed like 6 buses and 2 trains and a plane and a crop duster and all these things. It took so long to get there.
Star Trek transporter into a shuttlecraft.
Yeah, totally. That's right. Hovercraft. But it was really far away from where I lived, and I went, and they didn't accept me in the program because they said, well, you're really good, you don't really know what you're doing yet. And I said, yeah, I will if you teach me. And they go, well, we don't teach people like that. So I was going to Queens College just to drink beer and chase girls and shit. And I dropped out after probably, I don't think I even went a year. And I went to visit my mother, and she still lived in the Valley. And back then there was a real cool jazz music school, old school, like an old hippie jazz music school there called the Dick Grove School of Music. And it had been around for a long time, run by an old hippie named Dick Grove, who's a jazz guy. Cool. And all the guys in Toque went there when they were kids. And it's like a lot of people who grew up in the Valley who became great musicians, reputable musicians, studied at Dick Grove. And it was macrame and all that shit.
Yeah. But where was it? Where was it in the Valley?
It was actually on Ventura and a block, what would that be? A block east of Coldwater.
Okay, so
it's a dry cleaners now. So there's like a Ralph's on Ventura and Coldwater.
Okay.
If you're going east towards say Laurel Canyon and you go down Ventura, the next block is a dry cleaners. That used to be Dick Grove.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it'd been there forever. And I went and I spoke with Dick Grove, and I said, I'm really frustrated. I live in New York and I'm going to Queens College, and they won't let me in because they don't think I'm a musician because I taught myself. And he just looked at me. He was this old guy, looked like Burl Ives, and he said, do you love music? I said, yeah, I live for music. And he goes, I'll teach you. That was it.
Oh, wow. That's so
cool.
I went,
well, that's all I needed to hear. So I went home to New York, and I said, he was a great guy. And I said, all right, Pop, I'm moving to California. And he went, all right. And then I just called my mom, and I said, yeah, I'm going to move to California, and I'll find an apartment, whatever. And I started studying at Dick Grove. And it was fun.
What was Dick's instrument? Was he a guitar player?
I don't even know. I didn't study with him. He had a lot of teachers and things and they were all hippies, but they knew what they were doing, and they taught Lukather and all those other dudes.
Crazy. Wow.
Yeah, that's where they all went.
So how long did you do that for?
Probably well, it's the weird.
Yeah, until you joined a band, and then we're like,
until I joined a band, and then I had no money, and I couldn't afford it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I went for a few months, and I was learning how to sight read, and I was learning theory, and it was fun. Okay. Everybody there was fun, and then my mom said, a friend of mine from back in the old days has an acting studio over in West Hollywood. It might be fun for you to just do that on the weekend, since you're not really doing anything other than studying music and working a terrible job.
I was going to ask that, actually, because I was curious if you had
big mistake.
Yeah, well, so many of our comedian friends, it's like they just fall ass backwards into acting stuff, because they develop a thing, and but so a lot of people don't have actual training. So you actually went and studied.
Yeah, but only to study as a hobby, if someone were to do motocross.
Sure.
Or cooking or something.
Yeah.
You like cooking on the side on the weekends.
Took a cooking course, Yeah,
but you don't want to open a restaurant. It's not. And that's what it was for me. It was fun. I was on stage. It was fun to learn about acting, and it was fun to do it, and it was cool. But I never intended to be. Anything.
You're not getting ready to buy 8x10s and the whole.
No, and in fact, when I got signed, I did a showcase. They used to do these showcase awards on all these acting schools, and I didn't even take it that seriously. Right. Because I was like,
that's probably why it worked for you, is because
I think looking back, the reason why I ever got an agent or got successful is because I didn't want to.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I was working hard. I mean, I had a good
Yeah.
work ethic, but I didn't want to be an actor. So, I mean, I
Right.
didn't go in there and I wasn't just sweating and inviting
Yeah,
the
yeah.
industry. I didn't petition and try to get all these people to come check me out. I was
Right.
just like, I'm going to do my fucking scene.
Hmm.
And then when I'm done, I'm done. And I hope you guys all get signed. I hope all of you guys get
Sure.
careers
Yeah,
out of
yeah.
this. And then
Because everybody else there is actually like wants to be an actor. Yeah.
yeah, it was like, Ernest Borgnine was in the audience.
Really?
Like, yeah, they would
What?
they do these showcase things, and then they would invite you, they'd figure out your group, like beginner, intermediate, advanced. I guess I somehow became intermediate. And they
Wow.
would go, all right, invite a lot of industry people, as many as you can, and then we'll do our thing, and then hopefully someone will get some work. And
And
that's kind of how
you're just doing a scene, or what are you doing?
you just pick a scene, you pick a scene partner, you get a director.
Oh, with a partner. Okay, yeah.
With a partner, and
Yeah.
and there's a teacher. You find a teacher you like, and then you go, can you direct our scene? And they'd be like, sure. And we did.
Cool.
Me and my friend Mark did our scene together, and we really took it seriously. But I wasn't doing it. There wasn't like a means to an end.
Do you remember what the scene was?
Yeah, it was a one-act play that's out of print. I don't know who wrote it, but the title was Minnesota Moon.
Interesting.
And
Wow.
we picked it because it was two boys that grew up
Right.
together, and there was this emotional arc and whatever, but it was short. We could do like it was like a play that was like shrunk into a Twilight Zone episode. So we could do
cool.
like the whole thing in like 5 minutes. And
that's all you had was like a 5-minute like showcase?
Like well, yeah, because everybody,
right.
there was like
a million people,
a dozen scenes. So, you had
wow.
So yeah,
so you made that kind of impression in 5 minutes that somebody, is that what led to you getting an agent, or how did that work?
I got an agent that night.
Wow, that's great.
It wasn't even my intention. We did it. It was fun. We worked hard, like anything else, like when you make a record, there's pre-production, production, and then when you finish the record, you have a little party, and you're like, we did it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
high five.
High five. We did it.
Yeah,
And I was high-fiving, and someone came in and goes, there's an agent. And it was a pretty decent agent. He wants to see you. And I went, the hell does he want to see me for? And I went in, and he looked at me, he goes, where the hell's your picture? Where's your resume? I go, I don't have a picture. I don't have a resume because I'm a guitar player. I'm not going to be an actor.
Right.
And he says, I want to see you and I want to sign you. And I was like, sure you do.
Were you a long-haired kid at this point? Like, were you?
Yeah, I had like hair, probably maybe not this long, but it was probably down to here. And again, I didn't look like an actor. I looked like a musician. But he saw me and we talked, and he said, I'm going to make you a star. And I was like 22 or something, and I just thought, well, I'm broke. I'm living in a terrible apartment in the valley with my roommate.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's like
starving. So he said he's gonna make me a star.
You're gonna get me work. That's all I want is to get some money, so I can actually make money, so you can go play music. Is what you want.
Well, that was the idea. It's sort of like, well, I could just do this acting thing and become a star and make a lot of money, and then I could afford new guitars.
And how old are you at this point?
22.
Okay, so yeah, you're a kid.
So I didn't know anything about the business. I didn't know anything about I was totally new, and I just went, all right, you make me a star, and then once I'm a star, I'll quit this stupid business and I'll buy a guitar. Thank you, both. and screw you and all this shit. And I started auditioning, and he cut my hair, and I got pictures, and I played the game. Sure. And then within a year, I started working. I was like working.
That's so
I was working at a cheesecake factory up in Canoga Park, flipping pans, and I was going to these auditions in Hollywood and trying to make my shift at Cheesecake, and then go back for a callback, and then drive up there, and it's like 18-mile difference in traffic, and it was like it was hectic. But then I got jobs. I started booking television jobs, and then I was like, holy crap, I'm an actor.
So the actual auditioning process is such a scary. I've only had to do it a couple of times because I never had any intention of being an actor too, but I fell ass backwards into some stuff. But
if you had moved to LA and you said, I'm going to move to LA and I'm going to bring my band, and someone saw you and went, I work for ABC television, I think you should come in, and blah, blah, blah. If that caught fire,
right,
you would have worked as an actor, because it's just this weird thing where if you're in that town, all of a sudden you get swayed, and then they dangle fame and fortune in front of you. It's like, well, yeah, sure, I'll do it for a little while. And the next thing you know, 10 years goes by, and you're like, what happened to my band?
I know. That's the crazy. But I mean, I think it's really great because you ended up like not just like hanging around doing stuff we never heard of. You ended up in like 90210 for an entire season arc. Was it? What year was that? Like, I know is there a bunch of things before that kind of, obviously everything kind of leads to this.
There was like a couple of I did the first thing I booked was, again, I didn't ever intend to book anything because I was so naive. My agent even told me, he goes, you're not going to book 98% of your auditions. And I went, oh, great.
Right.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I know.
You're telling me I'm not going to, he goes, yeah,
Yeah.
you're not going to, don't think you're going to go in there and they're going to give you your own.
It's a really slanted ratio. Like you really
it's terrible.
You go in and swing your sword and hit like 1 out of 100 things. It's crazy.
100%. That's 100%.
It's just the nature of the business. Yeah.
And I got used to that. And then I gave up the result. I said, since I'm not booking anything, I don't really care about this audition, because it's like if you went in and you knew that the guarantee was you're not going to, hit a home run, you don't care anymore about hitting a home run. You work on other things. You work on form, you work on this, whatever. So I just was like, well, since I'm not going to get this job, and that was kind of my mantra, I'm not going to get this job.
Right.
So I would go in, and if it was Steven Spielberg, he didn't make me nervous because I knew he wasn't going to hire me.
Right. I don't care. I'll just.
When you're at that I don't care phase, you can pretty much do anything.
That's true. Yeah. And I think that's how guys kind of like, whether it's music or acting or whatever, it's sort of like, that's often when you go on stage and you're like, if we flop, we flop. It's kind of like.
And magic stuff happens because
Yeah.
you're conscious. And I turned into that guy along the way. I was looking for my big break, and then it didn't happen. And I'm never going to get hired. This is stupid. My agent's going to drop me soon. So I would just go in every audition, and I didn't care. I cared about what I was doing, but I gave it up. I was like, I wasn't, you know what I mean?
So was the Meatloaf thing before 90210, or was it after 90210?
Oh, that was way after.
Okay, so
my first job I ever got while I was flipping pans was on a sitcom.
Oh.
It was a mid replacement song called The Marshall Chronicles. It was on ABC for like 2 months or something, and it was a high school thing, and it was a 3-camera sitcom that we all see on television. I went in going, they're not going to hire me.
Right.
And I went in, they laughed, but I went, yeah, sure you're laughing, but you're still not going to hire me. I don't care how hard you're laughing.
Yeah.
And I went home, and they went, guess what? You got it. And I was like,
you got it.
Because I'd done hundreds of auditions and didn't get anywhere.
That? Wow.
So I broke my cherry, and they hired me and drove up to Universal Studios through the back entrance because you're working now. Yeah. And I went right to a soundstage and did this sitcom with a young comedian named Adam Sandler.
No,
which was interesting how that turned out. And then it was cool. And then from that,
whatever happened to that guy?
I don't know. He's probably flipping burgers somewhere.
Yeah.
I think he works at Del Taco somewhere.
Yeah, in the valley somewhere.
In the valley, yeah. In Reseda.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And then once you work, then other casting people start taking you seriously. It's like you're in now. And so then from that point forward, I did a movie of the week, and I did some episodic shows and Stephen Bochco show. And then I got The Heights, and then that was sort of the peak.
But was The Heights before 90210?
Yeah, it was the year before.
So and that was an Aaron Spelling show.
Yeah, that was one of those shows where, everybody who's an actor who has a talent, like horseback riding or basketball, or
sure, sword fighting,
sword fighting, yeah. So anything, the remake of Camelot, those
exactly,
because you have sword. So I had music on my resume, special talents, music, sings, plays, whatever. So anything that came up musical project, I went up for all of them because that was their ace in the hole.
Sure, yeah.
And this was a musical.
They don't have to like teach some guy who doesn't know how to play guitar.
Right, and they really wanted. Exactly. And Aaron Spelling really wanted a cast that was real musicians that could really play. He didn't want to just have so everybody that could play even a little bit or a lot of it went in on this thing. And it was like thousands of people. And of course I went in and just did my thing. And it was a very, very arduous, terrifying process because I had 7 or 8 callbacks, and you're just give me an answer. Just let me know if I got it or not. I'll take either one right now.
Yeah, of course.
But I can't keep going home because it was going to be it was one of those life changer ones.
Of course. Yeah.
And at the time it was just a pilot. But it was a big pilot from a big network with a big producer.
That's Fox. Was that Fox back then, or what was that?
It was Fox. It was Spelling Fox, and it was going to make more money than I had ever seen.
You're on the same lineup as Simpsons and
that was the other thing too. I was watching The Simpsons and Married with Children, all these people I loved. So
it was a hot network for sure.
It was a hot network, and they were the ones to watch. So I thought, damn, I really want this thing, but it was a lot of callbacks.
And that's what brought you to Vancouver, and that's when we crossed paths.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's really crazy. Yeah. So now, how many episodes did it run? Did it do a full season? I know it did.
It did. I don't know it did 13 episodes, which isn't a full season. I'm not, most seasons I was told is 22 or 26,
Okay.
but this was 13, but so I guess it didn't go a full season, but it was a full year out of my life, and it was like exhausting.
In Vancouver, Canada, which you'd probably never been to before.
Never been to Vancouver, Canada at the time. I might have played there on the year before. I did a tour with Susanna Hoffs at the Bangles. That was like my first pro gig.
We jumped right over that. We jumped over you playing with Susanna Hoffs, who had just come off of. How long was she out of the Bangles at that point?
They broke up.
They
had actually broken up, and they all went their separate ways. And she got a solo deal right away, and she did an album. And then I had known her because just from jamming in Hollywood, we were friends. And then she was auditioning bass players for. She was going to go. She had a solo band. Solo album, and they got the opening slot for the Don Henley tour.
That's a huge gig, dude.
It was a huge gig. I mean, I was playing at like FM station and all these like,
So it's really interesting because when I hear and then you got into acting, it's not like the music was kind of like on pause. You were still kind of like, It was tough though, because it was kind of like having two wives, they're both going to get a little jealous, and they're both going to feel like you're not giving enough of yourself to them, and you're not. No.
So the other one forgets that the other one was there at the time, and vice versa. So it was, I tend to remember the acting gigs more because I wasn't putting enough fuel into my music. So I would get this cool thing like that Sue Hoffs tour, and then nothing. And then I'd be playing at a place in Hermosa Beach somewhere with my friend. And so I didn't make any momentum in my music career because I wasn't giving it enough attention.
Yeah. I mean,
you have to.
It's so tough. And I remember you saying like, you're out playing late and you got to get up at like ridiculous o'clock to go audition at something. And you're just, it's like, you're basically living two very, very demanding lives at the same time. Yeah.
Uncomplimentary too. They don't go together.
No, it's weird, isn't it? It's kind
of their hours are completely different. Their lifestyles are completely different. It was kind of stupid, but the acting thing took off probably because I had representation. They expected me to devote all my life to it, and I did. Because I was like, well, I'm not going to half-ass this and half-ass that.
So did you have representation when you went away for a year with Susanna Hoffs?
No, I knew Sue.
So that's before you got an agent then.
No, I had an agent. That was the weird thing. It was like I got an agent in like 89 or something.
Okay.
And then between 89 and my first acting job was 90. But I wasn't working so much as an actor that I was like, well, music's out of the, I got to get rid of that.
Sure, yeah.
I was trying to do both. It was I would audition for a band and they'd be like, that's great. We're going to go on the road and do these things. Like, oh, well, I got an audition for like, Facts of Life or something.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
3 lines, but I gotta go. Everyone's counting on me. So I was so young. I didn't understand that you couldn't do both.
Right. Well, of course, when you're young, you can take on the whole goddamn world. But did you miss out on any auditions that like went on to be something musically? I mean,
I don't know. I don't really remember. The only auditions I remember in LA is before I got anywhere near an acting career. I just arrived to LA. I was living in a terrible apartment deep in the valley with my best friend.
As you do.
As you do, right? Exactly. Shag carpeting and, no furniture. And there was, back then, like right around the tail end of the 80s, right around 1990, there were really no really great quality bands on the Strip anymore. They all got eaten up.
Yeah.
There was the A bands, and then the B bands, and the C bands, and then there was just like these D bands that were just left. Nice guys, but I was way too late for the
boom. Yeah.
For the boom, and so whatever was left over was just like the scraps. And there was a band who I won't mention their name, but they didn't.
Oh,
really
come
go
on!
Anywhere.
Just kidding.
I don't know. I should. But they were nice. But I mean, you could tell that they were like very derivative, and there's a reason why they didn't get signed. They were really, really, really not good, and they were kind of a 10th rate Poison or something. I mean 10th rate, like just no songs, and they had the image and they had the studio with all the mirrors and all that shit. Right. And I got the call to go in and audition for them, and it was just not my thing, man. I went in and I wanted, I didn't dress like they did, and I had I had like fucking leather Vans, not checkers. I had like these Hawaiian Vans. That's what I had.
Oh wow!
And I might have been my only pair of shoes at the time. And I went in, and they were all in rehearsal. They were all puffed up and glammed out.
Wow! Yeah, that was a thing.
Everywhere.
Yeah, I forgot.
And they had
That's a thing.
choreography, and I just wanted to play, you know. So I went in and I plugged in and I started playing, and I remember when the solo section came up for one of their songs. Someone, like, it was very Bret Michaels. The singer goes, he's singing his thing, and he goes,
Take it, Zachy. Yeah,
that's what he said. He said, "Take it, Zachy." And then they all leaned into my amp to hear my solo, and I was just like, "Oh, this is so bad." This is.
But I bet you passed the audition nonetheless.
I don't know. I don't think I was glammy enough for them. I think that they wanted like a CC DeVille kind of guy.
Your hair wasn't like big. Your hair wasn't big enough. Yeah.
I couldn't grow big hair. I tried.
Yeah. Well, what do you?
This wasn't for me, thank God.
Yeah.
But they got a big CC guy, and then the bass player stole my girlfriend. So I think it was.
So the joke's on you.
The joke's on me. Yeah. He showed me.
Yeah, he showed you. But anyway, so the Susanna Hoffs thing, you became a bass player for her. So now, was that even something you would entertain? Because you were a guitar player. You're like me in the world that we kind of play bass, we kind of play guitar. You're a much better guitar player than I am. But the one thing that you always have going on is where you could sing, you can play bass, you could play guitar. And so it kind of puts you in a position when a gig comes up, it's like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that, you know?
Yeah.
And so was that your first sort of like, yeah, I can play bass, or was that?
I think so, because I was playing bass. I would go to bands, and some bands I was in, the bass players weren't that great because they were just playing bass like a guitar.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I was like, well, that's not how you play bass, because, you know, we have the same bass heroes. So I just went, well, this is how you should do it. Just let me, you know, and I would do it, and then everyone was like, that sounds good. Why don't you play bass and you play guitar? So I started switching off, and I would play bass, and then, you know, in LA or whatever, wherever, you play out and someone goes, "You're a really good bass player and you sing." I have a band and I have this gig and I have a wedding and I have this reputation. Next thing you know, you're working as a bass player. Old Jed's a millionaire.
That's the same thing that happened to me. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where, and like anybody, you kind of go where the heat is. Like, it's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a thing. I'll play bass and do that. So with Susanna, how long did the Susanna Hoffs gig go on for?
Well, it was just that tour. So it was like 91. I want to say the summer of 91 until the fall, I believe. So it was really only like 4 or 5 months maybe. And then that band never played again.
Wow. And then
but I stayed friends with all those dudes. And
then it just sort of wrapped up. Well, because Rusty from Paul McCartney's band was in that or something, wasn't he?
Rusty was the lead guitar player. Rob Ladd, who later played with Don Henley in a solo band.
Oh, wow.
Paul Trudeau is on keyboards, who I'm friends with this
Who's
day,
with Billy Idol now.
Was with Billy Idol, and you know him as well. And Sue, and so it was, and a guy named Daniel sang backup. So it was a really quality band, and all those dudes at the time were all road dogs. That was my first.
Oh, really?
That was my first real gig, my first real tour. They all had done. I mean, Rusty was next to him and Mike Landau were probably the two biggest session guitar players in LA at the time.
Yeah,
they played on everything. Those two guys.
Yeah.
So I mean, Rusty was like mega. Even then, he was like a big deal.
That's funny, right? Yeah, because he's like, and then he ends up getting the most cheery gig ever.
Yeah,
straight up.
And he earned it, man. You know,
yeah,
I was like, God, I wish I stayed close with Rusty, because they were looking for a guy like me and you who could play bass or guitar and sing any part. And there's like me and you and a few other guys that can do that. And
Brian Ray.
And Brian Ray,
yeah. And Brian Ray, he's the other guy, and he got the gig.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I have no complaints about that band. I wouldn't take anybody out of that band. They're one of the best bands I've ever seen. Yeah,
they're amazing, incredible.
But yeah, I know, because you know those guys, and Abe and all those guys. It would just be kind of like, you know, oh yeah, Zach, he plays bass and sings. Let's just get him.
I ran into Abe after like about a year into that when they got the gig, and I saw him at a Trader Joe's, and we were catching up, and I said, yeah, the band sounds amazing, and I think he said something like, you know, you would have been perfect for the Brian part. And I'm like, thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Just don't tell
Too
me.
bad we didn't know you. It's like,
yeah,
I didn't know your number was. I think it was something like, we didn't have your phone. At least I would have gotten the audition.
Yeah, because by that point you were back in Vancouver or something like that.
Yeah, I was back in Vancouver by that point.
So yeah, I
was like, I didn't know where you were.
So how does that work? You go to Vancouver. It's interesting because you've called so many, like, Los Angeles, New York, back to Los Angeles, Vancouver, back to Los Angeles, and eventually Vegas. So, you know, that's the interesting thing is, so then you come back from the Heights because it doesn't get picked up or whatever.
Right.
Which is another fucking unfortunate reality of showbiz, is that it's like, here's your big break. Thank you for your time. You know, it's like, stuff kind of
you're
either
just
catches.
Finished. That's all.
You're just finished. That's all. But it's one of those things where, because a lot of those guys in the Heights, what was the bass player's name on the Heights? The Heights was a TV show about a rock band. Just so anybody who doesn't know, it was it based? What was it meant to be based in? Like
no one knows.
Arbitrary town of some sort?
I think it was, I think they really wanted it to be an East Coast show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was the weird thing. Seattle was so big then. All the Seattle bands were on the radio. We were all listening to them. They were all on the radio.
And Vancouver can pass for Seattle fairly.
It looks just like Seattle. Yeah. And we thought that we were going to be this kind of grungy Seattle apropos band of the time, because that was what we were all listening to that, obviously, and it was all in the charts. And then they sort of turned us into this kind of pop.
Well, that's because you had Jamie Walters.
Jamie Walters, yeah.
But
Jamie Walters was like, his favorite artist was Neil Young. I mean,
how do you like that? Yeah,
he was a rock dude. He wasn't, he didn't.
But he was admittedly dreamy. So I mean that
he was very dreamy. He had those eyes,
that
and
had that kind of. He was there was a moment there where he was dating Drew Barrymore, and that song, "How Do I Talk to an Angel," was a giant hit, and.
Yeah, well, that was where I found out what kind of music we were doing, because I didn't really know reading the script. I had no idea.
Right, because you come in and the songs are written, and
written. Yeah, it's like the Monkees. It was all written and recorded. We went in and did the vocals, and when we showed up at the studio and they played the track, I went, "You kidding me?"
Right, you're like, "Oh, okay.
This is what we're gonna sing." This,
yeah.
It was so 80s and so stuff that I at the time I didn't understand or listen to.
Solos, lots of sax solos,
and everything was processed. There was no real instruments and stuff like that. Right. So I was just like, I don't get it. But sorry, someone called and I said, "Screw off."
I'm more important than that. That's awesome. I like that.
You are
appreciate
always,
it. Yeah,
always and forever. But anyway, I'm a good soldier. I went along with it, and I did my best.
It's a gig. It's a
great gig. I wasn't stupid enough to go, "I hate this. Fuck you."
Yeah.
So we did it, and we did all the music, and we recorded at Little Mountain because we had to sync to the stuff we're going to shoot to.
Right.
So and I was at the time the only guy in the show at the time that was doing studio work as a musician.
Mm-hmm.
So the producers got used to that, and they would call me in and we go, "Are you doing anything Saturday? I know you're not shooting, so can you come in and do a bass track or a guitar track, because we can't wait for LA to bring up the tracks, and we got to do it here at Little Mountain like tomorrow." And so I did a lot of kind of moonlighting for.
So you were kind of like the go-to guy in case anything like that happened. They're lucky they had you for that, man.
Yeah, it was kind of and I don't know if I ever got paid extra, to be honest. I was just like.
And you're too young, to even consider like, what does it pay? Like, what?
What does it pay? Yeah, exactly.
Like, no, it's just kind of like, you're lucky to be there. You're like, thank you. Oh yeah, sure. I get
to
play guitar.
Totally, I get to play guitar all day long, and then
awesome.
I could have made money today, but that comes. But yeah.
So the show went on. When the show went away, what was the bass player's name again?
Alex Desire.
Alex, he's amazing. He went on to be a Becker and a Ted Danson show, and some of the other people. Yeah, I mean, he did really great. And some of the other
Jamie had a big solo career because he did 90210 a few years later.
That's right.
The year after I did it, and he was offered a solo deal with Atlantic, and
really?
Obviously took it.
Yeah.
And he made 2 albums that I think both of them went gold. And then he asked me, because at that time the Heights was as much of a musical thing as a TV thing, and you have to promote. So they would ask us to go do shopping malls. We did all the shopping mall
and you being the only real other musician.
Kind of, yeah. I could handle all the vocals and all the other instruments. So the Fox went, "Well, why are we spending money for all these people? Let's just get Jamie and Zach to do it."
And you're like playing shopping malls to like young screaming girls, I'm sure.
Thousands.
Like Beatlemania.
It was complete Beatle, like hair pulling, clothes ripping. It was insane. It was everything you see. But
were you part of the clothes ripping, or was it mostly trying to get to Jamie?
I did all the clothes ripping. Yeah. I would rip Jamie's clothes.
Well, I mean, it's got to be interesting though when you're playing right next to this teen heartthrob, and you're just kind of like the other guy. But yeah,
I played the Richie Sambora part. You know,
there you go.
They know who I am, but I'm Richie. They're there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you kind of get away with like not having to carry the heavy load, just kind of do your thing and get the hell out of here. Yeah.
It's a great part to have.
It is, yeah. You shine, but you don't have to kind of deal with all the stuff.
I don't have to deal. Yeah, like the gig's over, I can go over there and get dinner.
Because guys like Jamie, man, like Jamie, it's so crazy to think like there's a moment in time where Jamie was like, you know,
huge,
everything. Yeah, and it's like, and it's the weirdest thing about the industry that it's just sort of like they just kind of move on to the next thing as soon as whatever else comes up, you know.
It happened like that, man. We went all over the world for a few years, like repeatedly, and even Atlantic Records actually funded a band. We had like this band with Gary Malaber from the Steve Miller Band was the drummer, and it was a bunch of real like great.
Were you playing guitar? Paul Trudeau, of course. Paul Trudeau. Were you playing guitar in that thing, or were you playing bass, or what were you doing?
I was playing lead guitar. That was like my first lead guitar gig, where I went back to playing lead guitar, and they hired like a studio bass player guy named Alexis. He was great, and we went. You know, we opened for like Night Ranger, and I mean, we because Jamie really didn't have a genre. He was just So we could play with New Kids on the Block, who were brand new, and we played with Night Ranger. And of course, I was interested in playing with Night Ranger, so I became friends with those dudes. So it was exciting. It was like my first real touring experience outside of the Sue Hoffs thing, especially going to Europe and living on a bus and all that stuff. So
that's true. I never thought of that. So that was your first trip to Europe?
That was my first trip to Europe.
In a teen heartthrob. What was the European reception like for Jamie?
Well, here's the thing that I realized. It's as big as television is in the States to promote somebody or to make somebody feel very big and important.
Yeah.
In Europe, it's 100 times bigger.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
100. I mean, 90210 is like a religion over there.
Yeah. Sure.
Or any big television show.
Yeah.
You know, if it's a phenomenon in the States, well, we have, you know, hundreds of those kind of shows.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, whereas for every Friends, there's another show that you like just as much. But in overseas, there's only Friends.
Yeah, it's true.
There's only 90210. So when
the ones that translate over there are literally like the cream of the crop. Those top
exactly.
And 90210 was as big can be back then.
It was bigger than it ever was in the States. You know, for us, it's like it's a TV show that everybody watches, but over there, it's Beatlemania. So anywhere that dude went, he was like mobbed and attacked and all this stuff, and they knew everything about. So the shows there were sick.
That's so crazy.
It was just sick. It was like we would play. It got to the point where we played We played a festival with all these other bands, Blues Traveler, like all these bands, and we would get on stage and we'd play, and our schedule was so busy, you know this deal. And we played and then left, and then the tour manager goes, "There's 100,000 people out there." And I go, "There was?" Like, I had no idea.
Right, yeah.
I thought it was just like 9,000, 10,000, 12.
Yeah.
It was 100, and then I looked, and I was like, "There is. It goes back as far as I can see and further."
But I just walk on stage and then
leave. You do your 20 minutes and you split, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy. That's so funny, yeah. So now, what is the next step after that? So once you get in, you do a season of 90210 as a drug dealer, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
And you get Brian Austin
with a heart of gold.
Yeah. You get Brian Austin Green hooked on, what was he hooked on? Blow?
Crystal meth.
Crystal meth. Dang, you're a really hardcore drug dealer.
I was hardcore.
Of course, that would have been like the drug of like every probable after school special and everything else at that point. Yeah, because it
was weird because like he had this plot line where he had to do these graveyard shifts. He worked at a radio station.
Oh, okay.
And I managed the radio station. I was his boss.
Right.
And I hired him and Tori, and then they broke up, and he had to do these graveyard shifts and study for his exams. He goes, and it was very typical sitcom situation. He goes, "I just don't know how I'm going to do all of it at the same time." And I went, "I do."
Yeah.
And then thus.
Have you heard of Crystal? What is your is teeth retention a big deal to you?
Totally. Yeah. You're not attached to your natural teeth, are you? And then that was it. I got him hooked on it, and then he had these whole plot lines where he robbed and stole, and I wasn't in every episode. I was only in like every third. So when I would come in, I didn't know what happened while I was gone. I'd have to read.
Oh wow, yeah.
I go, "What does that mean?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, he stole stuff out of your drawer." And I go, "Oh," because I had no idea what that.
That's hilarious.
Do you know what I mean? I wasn't there.
What kind of time difference is there between episodes for you?
God, I don't even remember. The first one, I just walked in. I had one scene, and then I left. And then like the second one, they added more stuff for me. But I don't even remember how many episodes between. I maybe 2, 3, something. I don't know, because I only did 6, but they measured it out.
Oh, you only did 6 episodes. Okay,
that's it.
Now,
but they measured it out.
Right. Did you notice any difference in your day-to-day life when you had been on 90210? Did it make any difference at Starbucks or anything like that? Or
100%, dude.
Oh, really?
When I left the set, I had kind of hair like I have now, and I used to wear it in a ponytail because I'm fashion conscious. And I looked terrible, dude. I had like this terrible ponytail, and I had a little hoop earring.
I remember that. Yeah, the drug addict look.
This was the style in those days.
The drug dealer look, anyway. Yeah.
The drug dealer look, yeah. And I wore my own clothes, and they weren't great clothes. And
so really, they didn't even have like a wardrobe situation.
I think I showed up in my own clothes, and they were like,
"That looks good.
Yeah, that looks fine. We'll just put makeup on you, and I'll go wait in your trailer." And I would leave with makeup on and wearing my own clothes with my hair in a thing and a hoop earring. Yeah. And I would go to like Ralph's on Hazeltine and Ventura to shop for dinner or whatever, and people would just follow me.
No way.
Spy and point. Yeah, I mean, it was like a snowball thing where I'd go through, and there was a trail of people pointing. And that's him. That's him. Like I was on America's Most Wanted. I see you.
Right.
So that happened everywhere I went for that whole year I was on.
Wow.
That was probably the most recognizable, I guess, I ever was.
Of course, because you're on like one of the
biggest show.
Yeah, one of the biggest shows ever.
It was pretty nuts.
So now what happens after that? So once you kind of go through that phase, I know, because there's a gray area between I lost track of you on 90210 to when you landed in Vancouver. You went to Vancouver when I came to the States. It was this weird kind of
crazy
transition that happened. I'm like, what are you doing in Vancouver?
What are you doing in the States?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was kind of a weird time because I obviously had a acting career and I had a musical aspiration.
Right.
Which is not at all what I intended.
Right.
And it was, I was kind of fooling myself into thinking that one would help the other. And I realized later if you really want if you want, like, say you're an actor and you want to have a music career, the only way that you can really have a legitimate music career if you're an actor is if you're a movie star.
Right.
Like John Bon Jovi, or vice versa. Like if you're Bruce Willis, you can call Atlantic Records and go, "I want to make a record," and they go, "Fine."
Yeah, or Don Johnson, or
Don Johnson, guys, and it works the other way around too. If you're John Bon Jovi, and you go, "I kind of want to have an acting career," they go, "Okay, I called Spielberg. You're in his next movie." Like that, you don't have to audition.
Yeah.
So I realized that it's not going to happen for me if I'm just a working actor or a working musician. If I really want to attain my goals in music, particularly, I got.
So music kind of came to the top of your priorities by that point, or something?
I ignored it for too long, and I was delusional. I thought that I could actually have both, and unless you're powerful, you can't have both. So
I'm glad you found it again, because not that you ever lost it or anything like that, but I think the fact that I don't know anything about acting, and I think it's awesome that you got to do so many amazing things.
It was fun,
and have this great experience. But at the same time, you're clearly one of the most naturally talented people I know.
Thank you.
I'm mostly saying this because you're right there.
I'm right here, in San Francisco.
In San Francisco, yeah. No, but it's true to imagine the fact that you hadn't chased that down. And the cool thing about this is it brings us to what is now, because you called me one day and said, I'm in Vancouver. It's awesome, but it's, I'm thinking about changing.
Well, before that, we ran into each other again
in Huntington Beach, in New
California. Because you got my gig that I left.
That's
and
right.
You took over for me.
I came in to fill in Eric Dover from Jellyfish and Snake Pit Snake Pit had a gig in Huntington Beach every Sunday, and they said, come down and fill in for Yogi from Buck Cherry and Chris Cornell.
Yeah. Who is filling in?
Who is filling in for you? Exactly. So I'm like, okay. So I came down one Sunday, filled in, and then another Sunday, and next thing I knew, I was just traveling back and forth from Vegas to LA every Sunday, going, wait a second, I thought this was like I was doing like a night or two. And the next thing I was doing, it just kind of went on and on and on. And then you showed up one night, and it was like, dude, what? Like, I was like so crazy to see you there.
Yeah.
And
that was the first time I saw you since '92.
And then we reconnected really, really that time, and that really kind of really made it sort of, when you said, like, I don't know how much later it was, but you were living in Vancouver, which I suppose
Yeah.
were you still playing the game of like acting, playing music in that scene
I
up there?
knew that I wanted to, I knew that time was slipping away, and I knew that I never wanted to have an acting career. I kind of, I was young and naive, but I kind of got lost in it. It was like a marriage, it's like, it's a weird thing. You're married to somebody, and then after a while you go, this probably wasn't a great idea, but I don't regret it.
Well, yeah, of course. It's kind of like, all these years later, you finally kind of realize I'm a musician, or I'm not, when I really think about it, I'm not really an actor. And although, like I said, that has managed to kind of find itself for you again too, like where a few acting gigs have kind of popped up, or voiceover stuff. You do a lot of voiceover stuff.
Yeah, voiceover is fun. I mean, voiceover is musical. That's what I think anybody that is a natural musician can do voiceover. I'm convinced of it, because a lot of the looping that I did when I was an actor was all rhythm.
Yeah, that's true.
Have to do it's all rhythm and it's all melody. If you have to match your voice on that day, and your voice is kind of up here, then you just sort of hear it and you go, oh, it's kind of up here. And then,
right.
And they go, how did you do that? And I go, it's music, dude. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Yeah. You got a finely tuned ear for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Sure. Exactly. So I remember thinking, like, I was in LA and the acting career kind of fell apart, as it does sometimes. And my music career was just on the skids. I was playing in a great David Bowie tribute band, which was a lot of fun, but I wasn't making that much money. And I was back working at a terrible restaurant, waiting tables and just hating life. And CC DeVille was
from Poison.
Yeah. Was not a friend, but I would run into him a lot, and at gigs he would come, and he saw the Bowie band at the Cat Club, the old
I
Cat
remember
Club.
that. Yeah, he was really knocked out by your Mick Ronson.
And he just was like, you could hear him going, "Oh my God, this Mick Ronson guy's amazing!" I mean, it was such a small place, so it was louder than the band.
Right.
And I went back to my terrible waiting job, and he came in for breakfast, and he recognized me. And he said, why are you waiting tables? And I said, I got no dough. Woe is me,
Yeah.
And he just told me, he goes, you're too good to be in this restaurant. He goes, you're an amazing musician. You got to get the hell out of here right now and claim it, or something.
That's so awesome.
It was like a moment it was one of those, moment of clarity when I went, Jesus freaking Christ, you're right. And I quit that job, and I said, what are my options? I need to make dough. And I had I've been in Vancouver on and off for 20 years. So I had a lot of friends up there in the biz, and a lot of friends. You and I have a lot of mutual friends,
absolutely,
musician friends. And I wrote, and I go, hey, if I moved to Vancouver, I was thinking about what city I wanted to live in. I wanted to get out of LA. And they were like, yeah, dude, you can work at the Roxy. I'll get you a gig here. I was like, all right, you sure? Because if I'm moving, I don't want to move there and not do anything.
Right.
And then a guy I had spoken to said, I act up in Canada. I got a Canadian landed status. So when movies are shot up there, which they're always shot in Vancouver, you can go out there and go, hey, I'm a Canadian actor. And then you could make and I just thought, it's a good way to see if I still want to do this acting thing anymore. And I went up and I did I got landed, took 5 years, moved up to South Granville, got an apartment, and then the West End, and I was auditioning. I got an agent, and I was doing voiceover, but I was doing on camera too. And I did about 4 on camera jobs, and I was laying. The last job I did, I was as a lawyer. I had my hair cut real short, and I'm in a suit, and I had played at the Roxy till 4 a.m. or something the night before.
Oh no!
It was one of those like Roxy nights.
Yeah.
And and you wait to get paid, and they finally pay you at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And I had to be on set at 6.
Oh.
So I slept 2 hours, and I went to set, and I'm laying there waiting to get called, and it just hit me. I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is not, the road is over. I'm done. And I did that job. That was the last acting job I did. And I went to my agent, and I just said, I don't want to bullshit you guys anymore. I'm not into it.
Interesting.
And they went, okay, thanks. And then they released me, and then I devoted 100% of my time to music. And then I called you, and then I was like, I don't know what I'm doing in Vancouver anymore. I've done everything I do. I don't know what else there is to do here. And you said something amazing. Because I said, I'm thinking about Vegas because I had gone down that summer to play on Fremont Street with an 80s band.
Yeah.
And I loved
Mitch and those guys,
With Mitch and those guys.
Yeah.
And they brought me down, and I just said, "This is a great city." And and there was sun, which I hadn't seen in
of
5
course,
years in Vancouver. So I said, "There's the sun, there's people, there's you, there's everybody seems to be working. There's great musicians here, and that's where you want to be."
Yeah.
And I called you, and I said, "What do you think about Vegas?" "I'm thinking about Vegas." And you actually went, "Oh, dude, it's home."
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what you said.
Because the experience for me was like to come here because of the high overhead of living in places like New York and LA
or Vancouver,
Toronto, like any of the 4 big ones, for me, it was just, you can have a life here, and I think it was the first time where I kind of came here. All my friends were musicians. Everybody's working.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it is like, not everybody's an artist anymore. A lot of them are kind of like playing, a duo gig doing, Simon Garfunkel and Beatles songs over there, but everybody has a life. No one's like, destitute and starving and all that kind of stuff. So to me, it was like, it just felt like a really fertile, and that's why I always come back here. I spent some time in Nashville, LA, New York, and I always come back to Vegas going like, well, if all else crashes, I'll just, hey, Zach, let's go play Beatles songs over at the, wherever. Yeah. And there's somewhere to play and there's something to do. I mean, it's sort of the beauty of it. So when I said come down, I just knew. I said, well, you're an amazing singer. You play guitar, you play bass, you even play drums if you have to. There's not one, you're one of those guys that will come to town, something will materialize, and you just chase that down. And then, and then to not drag out too long of a story, but the fact that, now we play together with Bruce Kulick, we've done Kiss Cruise. We do it twice together now.
Cruise?
Yeah,
we did 2 cruises. I did 2 cruises with you guys.
Yeah, that's right. So the fact that we finally, and we ended up playing together right away. When you came to Vegas, it was sort of like we ended up playing in different things together and whatnot, and that was really fun because finally all these years, like, hey, we get to play together now. It's even weird to think that we haven't, like, and to be able to have you fill in for that guy or me fill in for this guy, and all that kind of stuff just kind of works out really well. We kind of occupy a lot of the same space, which I think is kind of weird. That we kind of like, when people think of a singer who can play guitar, they go, Zach or Todd.
Todd, yeah.
Or a bass player who can sing or play, they think of, one of us. But the long story short, it is now landing in, after this whole story, which I think is really fascinating. It's so funny to know you all this time and just sort of like objectively think of your story, and like having what basically seems like, you could have chased down the acting thing and even harder and even really made it a focus and sort of, I'm sure you could have made something of that even now. But the fact that one day waking up and going, you know what, I just want to play music. I just want to and come to Vegas and have a life. You're not killing yourself. You play when you want to play. You do what you want to do. And then like something like Corey Taylor comes along. So for anybody who doesn't know, Corey Taylor from Slipknot, who's one of the most versatile musicians on the planet, and one of the most, in a lot of ways, a really underrated vocalist, because I think people
100%
think of him in that Slipknot role or something like that. And in reality, he was the guy doing that really heavy music, but like able to turn that, like find his voice is so like, it goes from being that super crazy metal voice into like these really beautiful melody type voices. Yeah. And then the Stone Sour stuff is obviously that other side of himself. Yeah. But now he's doing a solo band, and he's assembled this amazing solo band, which includes you on guitar, which I think is such a cool, great way that this whole story has come around to land on this thing. There's a record made, a proper record. It's not like some, you're going to put it on Spotify and see what happens. It's like, no, he's a signed artist. He's got a lot going on. You're a valuable part of the thing. I've heard you singing singing like, amazing backups and trade-off stuff. And then, so it's yourself, Jason Christopher on bass, and Jason's from Prong and a bunch of different Ministry. I think he was in for a minute. A bunch of those.
Yeah, he was in Ministry.
He's an author now. We all know that. And then Christian Martucci, who's an amazing guitar player.
Phenomenal, sick guitar player.
He's just nuts. And his pedigree is really interesting, because the first time I ever played with him, I walked on stage at the Cat Club in LA, and he was jamming, and I had a Didi Ramone shirt on. He goes, "Hey, who are you?" Like, he's kind of like, like it was like that instant recognizing, like, "Whoa, you're cool. I'm cool. Let's hang out together." Yeah. And I've always wanted to do more with that guy, but I didn't know he was that kind of guitar player, because he played in Didi's band, in Didi Ramone's band. Yeah. And and that's one kind of guitar playing, my kind of guitar playing.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Meant to.
and then all of a sudden he's like this total shredder guy. I go, I had no idea.
He can pretty much do anything on guitar. The guy
he's
is
nuts. Yeah.
Just complete guitar player, and made me up my game on this record and in this band, because he would send me solos that he's doing on certain songs, and he goes, "What do you think of this?" And it would just be like, "Dude, that's mind blowing." And then I go, "Okay, my turn."
You're like, great. Now I got to take it up.
Yeah, thanks. Now give me a little while.
But that's such a great thing, because I think that I've said this before. I don't know if you feel the same way, but when I was young, I even before I could really play, I was kind of like, I always tell the story how my father in his wisdom thought, well, you have a guitar. I had an Epiphone acoustic guitar and I could barely play 3 chords. He goes, now you need a bass. Like this weird logic. And I was like, okay. And then I got this Gibson EB3 and I'm going, and then all of a sudden, like all the older guys, because no one wanted to play bass back then. That's the other thing we should mention about playing bass.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, so just come over and play bass. And I was literally like, but the playing catch up with guys who were so much more advanced than me is it makes you a better player. It makes you a better 100%. Musician. And that to always be like the big dog, you're not going to get,
better
up your game by being just.
No, you're not gonna live up to your full potential because you don't know. You don't have.
But when you got to play guitar with Christian Martucci, it's go, okay, here we go. Roll up your sleeves and here we go. Yeah.
It's his fault. If anybody likes anything I've done on this record, it's because of him.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's really exciting. That's a great place to end this, because I think that the fact that that's basically, there's really not much else to talk about, because it's sort of like that's currently happening right now. Can we talk about how far into this process we are? Like,
I think so. The album's done. We did the album during,
with Jay Rustin.
We did it with Jay Rustin, who's a nice Canadian boy. He did the Stone Sour records. He does the Anthrax records and
Steel Panther
and a ton of other bands. And he's just a phenomenal producer and dude.
One of my favorites.
He really is the best.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody should work with him. And we recorded it here at Kevin Churko's studio.
That's right. Hideout. Yeah.
At the Hideout, yeah. Dustin Schoenhofer's on drums, and
now what's Dustin from again? I asked you.
Dustin's from a band called Walls of Jericho.
Okay, yeah. That's great. He's a
phenomenal drummer, great guy. Everybody's just
so it's just sitting there primed to kind of explode. It's just kind of waiting for the coronavirus quarantine to kind of go away, so everybody can go back on the road and really kind of
totally, dude. And Corey has obligations with Slipknot. Because like everybody else, like you guys, I'm sure
everything got canceled.
Everything got canceled, so he has to make up a lot of stuff with those guys too. So everyone's trying to figure out when we can go.
Of course,
play. Nobody knows.
It's just a matter of time. But the fact that it's done and it's sitting there waiting to be released is so rad. And it's like I say, listening to your story and coming around to like, it took a moment to really kind of get to this point, but it really kind of pays off as far as like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I want to chase down music. And it's such a wacky thing, that idea of like, I'm going to move to Las Vegas with just, no experience whatsoever, but I'm just going to go there and see what happens. And then watch it sort of unfold into this, into a potentially life-changing opportunity is really awesome. So to me, it's really exciting to be able to kind of just witness it. And like guys like me and Brent Fitz, we've all said Zach is the most talented guy we know. And
thank you.
It's just a matter of time.
You just don't know that many guys.
Yeah, exactly. You're the most talented guy I know of the 3 guys that I know.
7 guys. So
exactly.
You're at the top.
Yeah. You're the only musician I know.
Right. Of all the guys on the phone right now, you are.
You are. No, but I'm really excited to see what comes of it and all that kind of
Thanks,
stuff.
Man. Me too.
So yeah, well let's end it there, because I think that this is such a
Oh, I didn't press record. Damn it.
Next time.
Next time is a good warm up.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think that's awesome. And
thanks.
And the funniest thing about this now is it's like, so I'll text you in about 10 minutes with Simpsons quotes.
Right,
totally. one of the first things I made notes of on here was like, why are we from an entire generation that communicates only in Simpsons quotes?
Why? Well, the real question is, why don't other people do
that? That's true.
Yeah.
But we always
seems normal to us.
People who are around us, I just feel terrible for. The wives are just like, what is happening right now? Yeah, they're just like, what is happening? There's 2 assholes.
We'll walk over there, you 2 nerds hang out with each other.
Just rambling on in Simpsons. Remember that episode where this happened? Yes, of course I remember.
It was one of my favorites. Didn't that happen? Hey, where are the girls?
But, all we do all day long. Yep. But anyway, okay, man.
Yeah,
I
dude.
really looking forward to everything. But like I said, I'll be texting you in 20 minutes with some sort of Mr. Burns quote.
Remember episode 5-2? Supplementary scenes.
Okay.
Okay, brother.
Peace.
This was awesome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.